She was an absolute joy. There was always humour, beautiful look in the eye, a very loving and lovable person.
Yeah, of course. But as well, we're the lucky ones that have spent so much time with Liz, and we have all them fond memories.
This is the story of what happened to Liz Dawn after she left Coronation Street in 2008. For 34 years, she'd played Vera Duckworth, the loud-mouthed, quick-tempered half of one of British soap's greatest double acts, on a show that had already been running since 1960. Behind the scenes, though, Liz was fighting an illness she'd kept hidden from almost everyone around her, and that fight shaped every single year that followed her exit from the cobbles. This isn't a video about why Vera Duckworth left Coronation Street. It's about what came after: the charity work, the health battles, an unexpected return to the cobbles, and one last performance nobody saw coming. And it's about how an entire industry eventually said goodbye to a woman who never once stopped working for other people, even while her own body kept failing her. On the 8th of November 1939, in Leeds, Liz Dawn was born Sylvia Butterfield, the daughter of an engineer. As a child, she survived a frightening accident, gashing her mouth so badly in a fall that doctors feared she'd be left with a hair lip. And it was only by chance that a skilled plastic surgeon happened to be working in Leeds at the time, repairing the damage with a series of skin grafts. Leaving school brought a string of ordinary jobs: a garment factory, a cinema usherette's uniform, selling shoes, even selling light bulbs in Woolworths. None of it pointed towards a future on television.
That's my cream skirt! And my best blouse! I'll kill him!
She took to singing in smoky nightclubs instead, a habit that would come back to haunt her decades later, and by the late 1960s, she'd landed small acting parts and adverts, working her way slowly towards a proper break. Her breakthrough came in 1974, when she was cast in Colin Welland's BBC drama Leeds United, the story of female textile workers fighting for equal pay. That small role led to a bit part in Coronation Street, playing a factory machinist named Vera Duckworth, and she was only meant to appear for a couple of episodes. That's when producers saw something in her, brought her back, and by December 1976, Vera had become a full-time regular. Here's a detail most fans never knew. It was actually her husband Donald, an electrician, who pushed her towards show business in the first place and insisted she needed a proper stage name, so Liz simply reversed the name of her daughter, Dawn Elizabeth, and became Elizabeth Dawn. By 1993, with Vera now a household name in her own right, Liz had published her autobiography, Vera Duckworth, My Story. Everything changed again in 1979 with the arrival of Jack Duckworth, played by Bill Tarmy. Vera and Jack quickly turned into one of the most recognizable married couples on British television, endlessly bickering, endlessly straying from one another on screen, yet clearly devoted to each other underneath it all.
Rita Sullivan said I'm a lucky woman, and I am.
And I'm a lucky man, Vera.
By 1983, they'd moved into number 9 Coronation Street, and their marriage held its place as one of the soap's defining relationships for the next 3 decades. Off-screen, Liz and Bill built a genuinely close friendship, and their families grew close alongside them. She'd later call him her best friend and say that in all their years working together, they never once argued. By 2000, Liz's charity work had already made her a well-known figure, well beyond the street itself. That year, she served as Lady Mayoress of Leeds and picked up an MBE for services to charity, having by that point raised more than £500,000 for a breast cancer appeal carried out in her name at St James's Hospital, on top of helping hospitals more widely across Manchester and Leeds. Thrilled and honoured is how she put it at the time, adding that Leeds meant so much to her as her home city. A year later, she and Bill Tarmy won the British Soap Award for Best On-Screen Partnership, cementing Jack and Vera's place as one of the genre's great double acts. What almost nobody realized at the time was that Liz very nearly collapsed during that same MBE investiture at Buckingham Palace. When she first started falling ill, she felt relieved just to be told it wasn't cancer.
I love you, Jack.
I know. And you know too, don't you?
I do.
Though the truth turned out to be serious in a different way. March 2004 brought the real diagnosis: emphysema, a severe and incurable form of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease brought on by decades of smoking, a habit she'd picked up at just 14 years old and only managed to quit in 2002 on her doctor's advice. By then, the damage was already done, and the disease would eventually leave only around a third of her lungs still working. For years afterwards, Liz kept this fight largely to herself, continuing to film Coronation Street as normal and hiding just how unwell she really was from colleagues and the production team wherever she could. Bill Tarmy, working beside her scene after scene, understood more than most and quietly did what he could to make things easier for her on set. By July 2007, the illness had progressed too far to hide any longer, and on the 22nd of that month, Granada Television announced that Vera Duckworth would be written out of Coronation Street at Liz's own request before Christmas. Nobody involved particularly wanted to make that call. Her body had effectively made it for her. Vera Duckworth's final scenes aired on the 18th of January 2008, and the character was found dead in her armchair, having passed away peacefully in her sleep from heart failure, just as she and Jack had been planning a retirement move to Blackpool. 12 million people, more than that in fact, tuned in to watch the curtain come down on 34 years of one of Coronation Street's most defining characters. That same year, Liz received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the British Soap Awards, recognition arriving at almost exactly the moment she was stepping away. A fortnight after Vera's exit episode, on the 3rd of February, ITV aired a tribute special called Farewell Vera, marking, by their count, 33 years and more than 3,000 episodes in which Liz had played the role. Former colleagues turned up to pay tribute, among them Nigel Pivaro, Johnny Briggs, Julie Goodyear, William Roach, Jenny McAlpine, Anthony Cotton, Alan Halsall, Vicky Binns, and of course, Bill Tarmy. What the documentary made clear was just how much Liz had kept hidden. Her lung disease, the legacy of a lifetime of smoking, and years performing in smoke-filled clubs had genuinely threatened her ability to keep working, and she'd pushed through it for as long as she possibly could. She summed up her time on the show simply, calling it the best time of her life, and admitting that leaving it had been very emotional. Once she was no longer tied to filming, Liz turned her energy towards the cause closest to her own life, becoming a prominent supporter of the British Lung Foundation and using her profile to push for greater awareness of chronic lung disease and the importance of catching it early, something she herself hadn't managed to do until it was already serious. June 2009 saw her spearhead the charity's Breathe Easy Week campaign, encouraging others to pay attention to symptoms she knew all too well herself. She hadn't given up her other charitable causes either, and the breast cancer appeal she'd started years earlier at St James's Hospital in Leeds kept growing well beyond that. By the time tributes were being written after her death, that single fund was said to have raised around £1 million in her name, roughly double the figure reported when she first received her MBE. Retirement for Liz Dawn was never really retirement in the way most people picture it. It amounted to a different kind of work, swapping scripts and studio lights for hospital wards and fundraising appeals at a point when her own health made even that increasingly difficult. Liz had always said she wanted to be part of Coronation Street when it reached its 50th anniversary, and in 2010, 50 years after the show first went on air, she got her wish, though not quite in the way anyone expected. By this point, Coronation Street's fan base stretched right around the world, so much so that the American rapper Snoop Dogg recorded a video message to help mark the milestone. That October, Liz appeared in a wheelchair at the naming ceremony for Cunard's new liner, the MS Queen Elizabeth, in Southampton, a rare public appearance that showed just how much her mobility had declined by then. That August brought confirmation that Liz would return to Coronation Street one final time. Bill Tarmy was leaving the show, and Jack Duckworth's storyline was going to end with him dying of cancer, so producers decided that in his final moments, Jack would be reunited with a vision of his late wife, though they were careful to stress she wasn't playing a ghost. Here's where it gets interesting. Executive producer Phil Collinson explained the idea had come from something he'd heard many times before, stories of people who, as they were dying, seemed to see someone they'd lost. The episode aired on the 8th of November 2010, and it's the same armchair Vera had passed away in years earlier, where Jack, now dying himself, is greeted by a vision of his wife, the two of them sharing one last dance together. "Are you waiting for me, my swamp duck?" she asks him. For viewers who'd followed the Duckworths for over 30 years, this was as much a goodbye to Liz's own remarkable run in the role as it was to the character herself. The following year, at the 2011 British Soap Awards, Liz returned once more, this time to hand her old screen husband the Lifetime Achievement Award, the very same honor she herself had received back in 2008. What nobody expected was one more comeback. In 2012, she appeared again as the ghost of Vera, this time in a lighter charity sketch for ITV's Text Santa Telethon, proving there was still an appetite to see Vera Duckworth back on screen, even briefly. Later that same year, Liz lost the man who had played her husband for more than 30 years. Bill Tarmy died in Tenerife, Spain, at the age of 71. For Liz, this wasn't simply losing a colleague, it was, in her own words, losing part of her family. Totally bereft is how she described herself, adding that in all their years together, Bill had always tried to make things easier for her, especially once her own illness took hold. A gentle giant, a lovely man, a true gentleman. That's how she remembered him, someone she'd miss for the rest of her life. Bill's funeral was held at the Albion United Reformed Church in Ashton-under-Lyne, where former castmates gathered to say goodbye. Among them, Julie Goodyear, Roy Barraclough, William Roach, Sue Nichols, Helen Worth, Kate Ford, and Shobna Gulati. Nigel, who had played Bill and Liz's on-screen son Terry for so many years, told mourners the world was a little poorer for not having him in it, and that heaven was a little richer. For Liz, losing Bill was one more heavy blow in a decade that had already asked a great deal of her. The following year, in 2013, Liz suffered a heart attack while on holiday with her husband Don in Spain, and had a pacemaker fitted afterwards, though the damage to her health kept mounting regardless. Between the emphysema that had already claimed most of her lung capacity and the heart problems now stacked on top of it, she leaned on a wheelchair, more and more just to get around. In 2014, she agreed to appear on a celebrity special of ITV's The Jeremy Kyle Show, and spoke candidly about what daily life had become. "I take a lot of tablets," she told viewers. "I just live every day and get on with it." It was a simple, almost matter-of-fact way of putting something that, for most people, would feel completely overwhelming. By this point, Liz Dawn had spent nearly a decade managing a disease that was slowly taking away her ability to breathe, all while continuing to raise money, continuing to campaign, and continuing, whenever she possibly could, to show up. December 2015 brought something nobody had expected. Liz came out of retirement, not for Coronation Street, but for its long-running rival, Emmerdale. In the soap's Christmas Day episode, she appeared as Mrs. Winterbottom, a demanding guest staying at Eric Pollard's bed and breakfast, and she explained her reasoning simply. "There's only one show I'd come out of retirement for, and it's Emmerdale," she said, adding that she just celebrated her 76th birthday that week and wanted to mark the occasion. It turned out to be her final acting role. For a woman who had spent so much of the previous decade fighting simply to keep breathing, choosing to step back in front of the cameras, even briefly, said something about who Liz Dawn really was. Performing had never just been a job for her, it was part of how she lived, right up until her body simply couldn't manage it any longer. By 2017, the illness first diagnosed 13 years earlier had reached its final stages. According to reports at the time, Liz underwent heart surgery that June, alongside her ongoing battle with emphysema, and by September, she'd been admitted to hospital in Manchester with severe breathing problems. Those closest to her knew the fight that had defined so much of the previous decade was reaching its end. Liz Dawn died on Monday, the 25th of September, 2017, at her home in Whitefield, Greater Manchester, with her family around her. She was 77 years old, and her family released a statement that captured just how loved she was. "We are devastated and heartbroken at the passing of our much-loved wife, mother, sister, grandmother, and great-grandmother. The incredible Liz Dawn," they said, adding that she died peacefully at home with her loving family around her. "The love, light, and inspiration in our lives," they called her, and we are bereft at her passing. She was survived by Don, her husband of more than 50 years, along with 4 children, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. After everything her body had endured since that 2004 diagnosis, 13 years in which she'd continued working, continued campaigning, and even found time to come out of retirement one more time, Liz Dawn's final battle had come to an end at home, surrounded by the people who loved her most. The tributes that followed came from every corner of the industry. Liz had spent more than 3 decades in. ITV and Coronation Street released a joint statement. "We have been blessed to have Liz in our lives, as she was such a kind, considerate, and caring friend and colleague," they said, adding that as Coronation Street's Vera Duckworth for 34 years, Liz had brought so much joy and happiness to so many, and that she would forever be remembered as a true Coronation Street legend. Executive producer Kieran Roberts called her a true Coronation Street legend, a brilliant actor, and a wonderful person, describing Vera and Jack's on-screen relationship as pure gold. Cast members past and present shared their own memories too. Michael Lavelle, who plays Kevin Webster, said Liz had been the matriarch of the show for younger actors joining the cast, the mother figure who helped guide us through the show, and he put it plainly. Jack and Vera were the foundations on which Coronation Street has been built. Simon Gregson remembered her as a warm, very funny, lovely lady who loved everyone she worked with, while Beverly Callard called her one of the kindest people she had ever met. Kim Marsh wrote online that Liz had been a wonderful lady who would be so missed, and Jane Danson, who had shared a birthday with Liz over the years, paid her own tribute too. Liz's funeral was held on Friday the 6th of October 2017 at Salford Cathedral, where past and present castmates gathered to say their goodbyes, among them Samia Longchambon, Alan Halsall, Helen Worth, Michael Lee, Vel, Kim Marsh, and Bruce Jones. Samia Longchambon gave an emotional tribute, describing how their beloved friend, Liz Dawn, had travelled from humble, working-class roots in Leeds to become a national icon. Her decades-long partnership with Bill Tarmy, as Samia put it, etched forever in the programme's history. This is what happened after Coronation Street said goodbye to Vera Duckworth, and it wasn't an easy ending. Liz Dawn spent the better part of 2 decades fighting a disease that never gave her much room to rest, quietly hiding just how hard that fight was for as long as she possibly could. None of that made it a story defined only by illness, though. She raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for charity, campaigned to help others catch lung disease earlier than she had, came back to the cobbles one last time to give Jack Duckworth and the millions watching him a proper goodbye, and even found the strength for one final performance on a rival soap, simply because she wanted to mark her 76th birthday doing what she loved most. When she died in September 2017, surrounded by the family she'd built with Don, the tributes made one thing very clear. Liz Dawn wasn't remembered only for 34 years of Vera Duckworth's sharp tongue and big mouth. She was remembered as a friend, a mentor to younger cast members, and, as more than one colleague put it, part of the very foundations Coronation Street was built on. From a factory girl in Leeds who nearly ended up with a very different life altogether, to a national icon who spent her final years still trying to help other people breathe a little easier. Liz Dawn's story didn't end when Vera Duckworth's did. For a woman who spent so long fighting simply to keep going, that's not a bad way to be remembered at all.